you've interviewed thousands and thousands of Entrepreneurs on Fire, and most people know you as one of the world's top podcast hosts and educators. What I'm interested in today is something a little different. After thousands of conversations with successful founders, investors, and business owners, you've had a front row seat to how wealth is actually created, protected, lost, and transferred. So I want to explore what you've learned about what we call uncommon wealth, right? So when you look at the people who ultimately created significant wealth versus those who simply created successful businesses, what patterns stand out to you?
There's one pattern that really stands out above the rest, which is they've created the number one solution to a real problem in a growing industry. The individuals that I've interviewed that have achieved uncommon wealth, which are a lot of people, but I've interviewed 5,684 people as of today. The hundreds of people in that number who have achieved uncommon wealth, so not a massive percentage, but a good percentage, they have created not the number 2, not the number 10, but the number one solution to a real problem in a growing industry. And that is where their secret lies.
And what's the common thread amongst those people from a character standpoint or a mentality? What do you find there?
One of the things is curiosity. It's not as common as you think, but the curiosity to kind of follow that thread all the way through, to really be curious, like, what do my customers really want? Like, why are they actually buying my product, my service, my solution to their problem? Where are they coming from? Like, what is their life like? Like, what is the reason why they press the buy button? How can I get into their psychology? Like, the curiosity to really take the time to dive deep on those things, it just pays dividends, because then you can just really amplify the few things that are actually working from actual customers, from actual clients, from actual people who are getting solutions to actual problems. And that curiosity is key. Number 2 is just like a desire to bring value to the world. There's a quote that's helped me start my entire journey with Entrepreneurs on Fire from Albert Einstein. And it's, try not to become a person of success, but rather a person of value. And there's so many people, myself included, for the first 32 years of my life prior to Entrepreneurs on Fire, I was just chasing success. I was just doing the things, taking the jobs, like making the actions that I thought were taking me closer to whatever success was, which I didn't even really have a good definition of. But when I flipped that on its head and said, I'm just going to first and foremost become a person of value, like that was everything. Like, that was Entrepreneurs on Fire. Like, that was just me giving a free, valuable, consistent podcast to the world 7 days a week, 365 days per year. And let's see what happens. And what happened was a multi-million-dollar a year business. What happened was uncommon wealth for me, which was something that I had failed to achieve with the other mindset of chasing success.
What separates the entrepreneur who builds a great income, or really a job, from the entrepreneur who builds lasting wealth?
Are you creating a real solution to a problem that's in a growing industry? That's one of the problems, that people do a lot of good things in industries that are either stagnant or dying. I see that all the time. It's the people that kind of get ahead of the curve. They kind of see where the wave is going. Of course, right now that wave is AI. I mean, there's no escaping that. And the people that are going to be making the next levels of uncommon wealth are the ones that years ago saw this wave coming, got in front of that, created amazing solutions to real problems in this industry of AI. And now they're reaping the rewards where everybody else is playing catch up. Whereas, like, for me, I was lucky because I got ahead of the podcasting and kind of the, build your own media empire industry before it became a thing. Like, people were like, what's a podcast? Like you're never going to, nobody listens to podcasts. And they were right at the time, but I was ahead of the wave. And so when the wave came, I was able to capture a massive amount of that. So for those people that are, achieving long lasting, like, uncommon wealth, it's that they've gotten ahead of a growing industry before it blew up.
If you think about 5,680. Is that what you said?
86.
Of the 86. And am I interviewing you or are you interviewing me? If you think about the wealthiest entrepreneurs you've interviewed, what are the most common regrets they express? Is it waiting too long to sell, not diversifying, taxes, family issues, succession planning? What do you think?
It's the fact that they were scared of the reality that they might fail. And so they didn't start as a result. When they learned, once they got going, that they had to fail, and they had to fail fast, and they had to fail often to get to where they wanted to be. I love the Seth Godin quote of like, this might not work. Like, to me, that's just a great mentality. It's like, this might not work. And guess what? That's okay. Because like so many people, like they want to see all the lights green before they start driving down that street. Like they want to have the entire fog cleared from that entire mountain before they start hiking it. It's like, no, like that's not how it works. Like you need to get out, start swinging the bat, and look to fail fast and look to get feedback from that. I mean, this is a JLD original quote. And I say it because it's so apt here, which is, show me somebody who's never failed and I will show you a failure. I mean, that is just a reality. You have to fail fast, fail often. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's famous for back in the day with Facebook. He said, move fast and break things. Like, you're going to break something good. Like, that means you're moving fast. Like, let's do it. Let's, of course, the mentality's changed with them now because they're a much different company, but they were in a race and they won that race because they were willing to run fast and break things. And that's key.
And what's the definition of failure? Like, is it their definition of failure? Is it society's definition of failure? Like, what is really failure from a definition standpoint? Because if we're entrepreneurs moving fast, breaking things, I think there's a book called Fail Forward. I forget who wrote it, but I remember it somewhere. Like, are we really failing or are we just learning along the way?
So we're learning along the way, but the definition of failure is it didn't work. And guess what? That's okay, because not everything's going to work. In fact, most things won't work, especially most things that you're trying to do that are going to be of great consequence and of great potential success. They're not meant to work. And when you do finally get it going, like, that's exciting. And in fact, I love the phrase, the higher the barrier, the lower the competition. Like, whenever I'm mentoring people or like talking to people that are building something and they say, John, this is really tough. Like, what you're telling me to do, it's really hard. It's really tough. I go, good. If you were doing anything right now that was really easy, you would know for a fact that you're on the wrong path. Because if it's easy and you succeed, everybody's going to do it because everybody wants easy success. And that means that nobody succeeds, because if everybody's doing it and you had initial success, then the saturation happens and everybody loses. It has to be really, really hard. So it scares away 99.9% of your potential competition, because they're going to be like, oh my God, we could never build that out. We could never do that. Like, we could never, like, think about Amazon. Like, Amazon lost money for decades building out the world's best logistical system ever. They lost money on every order. They did this, they did that. And then guess what? When there was no competition, because competition couldn't lose money for 10, 20, 30 years in a row. And so when Amazon finally had it all in place and they pressed a little button that said, let's make some profit now, they became one of the most valuable companies in the world, literally overnight. And so it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to grind. Like, when I was going to launch Entrepreneurs on Fire back in 2012, I hired a mentor and I joined a mastermind, and both of the individuals were just like, what are you doing? That's going to be so hard. Like, you're going to have to find a guest every single day of the year, 365. Like, you're going to get burned out. Your listeners are going to get burned out. Your guests are going to get burned. I'm like, oh, you're telling me this is going to be hard? Awesome. Because if it's hard, that means nobody else is going to do it. And if I figure a way out to do it, then that's going to be a disproportional win for me. Oh, you're one of the best people in the industry because I hired this mentor and this mastermind leader. They were the best in the industry. I'm like, and you're telling me this can't be done, and I figure out a way to do it? Like, think of the opportunity in that. Like, and I might have failed, by the way. I might have looked up after 3 months and been like, they're right. This was too hard. I failed. I couldn't do it. But at least I would have known that I was going after something that was worth succeeding. It's like, do you want to just go climb that little anthill right there and be proud of that? Like you can go do that right now, but who's impressed? Nobody, because everybody can do that. What about go climb Everest with no crampons or oxygen? Like that's impressive. Nobody's going to do that. And like, that's meaningful.
Except failure in that example is assured death.
Assured death. And hey, go out with a bang.
Go big or go strong. It reminds me of that Staples commercial. I don't know if you remember that, the easy button, right? Everybody wants that literal easy button, right? But that's not what entrepreneurship. But that mentality is impressive to me. So you had that hard mentality from the very beginning.
I come from an Army background. I was a tank commander in Iraq for 13 months. I was in charge of 4 tanks, 16 men for a 13-month tour of duty in war, getting shot at, IEDs, mortars falling on my head. Like, you're going to tell me that, not making a sale, sitting at home at my desk, or flubbing up an interview with some other, author that wrote a book, you're going to tell me that I should, crawl into a hole when that happens? Like,
not life or death. Not
perspective. Like, you need perspective. And like, that was such a big help to me. Now, I mean, did I feel normal human emotions when I launched? Of course I did. I'm a human, but I could put things in perspective.
Thanks for your service, by the way. One thing I find fascinating is you've intentionally structured your life and business around Puerto Rico. What drove that decision?
I was tired of paying
lifestyle tax. Yeah.
I was tired of paying $1 million a year to the government. And I said, let's start keeping the money that I make. Listen, I served my country for 8 years, 4 years as an active duty officer, and then 4 years in the reserves. I served my country. I served my government. Now I'm an entrepreneur and I'm still working for the government until June 15th of every year because I'm paying 51% tax. No, thank you. I'm going to move to a Caribbean island called Puerto Rico, and I'm going to keep the money that I make. I'm going to work for the government until January 14th every year instead of June 15th every year because I pay 4% tax, 0% everything else, no capital gains, nothing here, nothing there. And I'm going to do some cool things with that.
What do you think most people have misunderstood about that relocation to Puerto Rico?
I don't know. Probably that it's not a great infrastructure down here, that we have power outages, that it's dangerous, that, all things that, they're wrong about, but they probably have some perceived notions. And, a lot of people, make the comment of like, oh, I'd love to move down there, but, my family's here, or my wife would never do it, or my husband would never do it, or my kids are in school. And listen, those are all legitimate reasons. Keep paying the government half of your money. Somebody's got to do it. It just ain't going to be me, bro.
One of the big parts of my business is tax mitigation strategies for business owners. So I'm always fascinated by the different strategies people have employed to take advantage of tax strategies. And a lot of people have moved to Puerto Rico. Once someone reaches a certain level of success, do you believe taxes become one of the largest drags on wealth creation?
100%. Because they start taking away more and more of your money. And that allows you to invest less and less of your money into your business, to keep feeding and building the machine, to try new things, to hire more people, to advertise more. They take it all away and then they do whatever they do with it. I get to keep it all and then do what I want to do with it, which is all those things that I just mentioned.
And how long ago did you move to Puerto Rico?
10 glorious years ago.
So how has your thinking about tax mitigation evolved over the past decade?
I could never pay taxes again.
And most people think by not paying taxes that you're kind of cheating the government. But the reality is successful entrepreneurs reinvest a majority of that back into their business, stimulate economy, and generate more economic activity than having just paid taxes. Do you agree with that?
I bury all my money in my backyard and I just
Yeah, right.
But no, that's exactly what happens. You come down here, I bought a multi-million-dollar house. I have a full-time maid. I have a pool guy. I have a pest control guy. We go to dinner. We do trips. We do all these things. We have a Palmas Academy here, which is a K through 12 academy. What's a gymnasium called? It's called the Dumas Family Court because yours truly helped build that court from the ground up. It's like there's things you can do. I've been a I've built dozens of schools, through Pencils of Promise, in Laos and Guatemala and different places. I mean, charity water, like we've been able to do some amazing things on the philanthropic side. And, there's a lot of people that are like, oh, like you don't pay your fair share of taxes. Like money doesn't buy you happiness. I'm like, oh, money doesn't buy you happiness. Have you ever written a 6-figure check to an organization that you passionately love, a charity or a nonprofit? Well, if the answer is probably no, because you do that to the government every year, so you can't. But if the answer is yes, you're telling me that didn't put a smile on your face. Oh, it probably did, obviously. And that's how money can buy you happiness.
Yeah, you bet. And looking back, what strategies do you wish you had understood? What tax strategies do you think wish you would have understood sooner?
Just the whole, like, how can I make my total net profits, lower by investing back into the business or having more individuals on the team to grow the revenue. But it's kind of a weird, game where it's like you do that, but then you make more revenue, and on that more revenue, you get to pay more taxes. So, I would probably have had to find somebody like you for some more, detailed, structured, and legal strategies.
Well, better late than never, right?
Well, I just moved to Puerto Rico, so.
When you think about your life today, has your definition of success changed from when you first launched Entrepreneurs on Fire?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my first definition of success was to attain financial freedom. And now I've attained financial freedom. Now it's like, how can I live the happiest life that I'm capable of? Making my family, my wife, my son, and, any other future sibling, offspring that I bring into this world, and, other nonprofits and charities that I believe in, how can I positively impact them? And to me now, that's kind of where success is. But at the same time, like, still doing what I love, which is, growing a business, running a business, generating revenue. Cause to me, like, making money means that you are delivering value to this world. Like, people aren't just handing me money because, they think that I have a cute smile. Like, they're doing it because I'm adding value to their world. And so I like that scorecard.
So now that you've achieved financial freedom, what does legacy mean to you now?
Legacy is not something I've really ever been interested in, and maybe I'll change my mind as I get older, but I haven't changed my mind in many years. I really love that book by Todd Henry, which is Die Empty or Die on Empty, which essentially is like, I am not looking to really leave any legacy, behind, besides the fact that, like, my son and any other kids that we may have, and hopefully their kids, are just good people. Like, I don't want to give them money. Like, I don't want to give them, necessarily a leg up in the world. Like, I want them to make it on their own. Like, there's a book that I love called Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb. And it's like, the people that really, number one, make it in this world, but number two, appreciate the fact that they've made it, are ones that had to struggle and scrape and crawl their way there. And that's because they became anti-fragile, where you have so many people that I hear that are like successful, that are just like, I'm working so hard because I just want to give my child the life that I never had. I'm like, all right, way to screw up your kid. And again, that's my opinion. I welcome yours, and I wish them the best, but you're probably creating a fragile, spoiled child that is not going to appreciate money, not going to appreciate hard work, and they're going to be fragile. And then when they actually get hit in the face by life, which they will, they're going to break into 1,000 pieces because they're a fragile individual. Where the anti-fragile people, they will thrive.
Well, I definitely want to create anti-fragile daughters. I've got 2 daughters, 15 and 13, almost 16 and 14, heck, maybe almost 21 and 25. I don't know, right? But my perspective has changed as I've gotten older, right? I'm about to be 47 years old. And the legacy that I want to leave for them is, I don't want to leave, the typical trust fund baby, right? The trust fund kid. We've all heard about that. But what I have started thinking about lately and put in place is I do want to leave them comfort, right? I don't want them to be fragile, to your point, but I want them to be comfortable. However, they're not going to have a free-for-all in the trust if something happens to me, right? So we've put mechanisms in place where they can take a distribution from the trust up until a certain age equal to their W-2 income, their 1099
Oh,
income, or their earned
that's
income,
interesting.
right? And not a penny more.
So there's
They
some
can take,
incentive there.
yeah, absolutely. So it eliminates the sit on the couch and just take money out of daddy's trust, right? They can also be philanthropic up to a certain point, but there has to be an agreement on what type of philanthropy they're going to do. And it's also creating generational wealth, right? So at a certain point, they can take money out for their first home purchase, but it's only a certain amount for their first home purchase based on a certain maximum value of a home. They can take money out for a car, but it can only be a certain level of a car, right? So you can put the benefit of a properly structured trust or multi-layered trust structure is you can put mechanisms in place that a third-party trustee or independent trustee can manage, and you can rule from the grave. So you can put those things in place for future generations so they don't just take everything out. Because look, the Vanderbilts and the Rockefellers are a great example of that, right? The Rockefeller family is thriving as much as they thrived, a century ago. The Vanderbilt family is practically out of money today, and their names are just on a couple buildings. And it's all because of family governance and trust setup to do that. So I would challenge you to think about that, right? I mean, you don't want to, what I hear you saying is you want to create strong, non-fragile people, but at the same time, you're creating so much success and wealth for yourself. Unless you're just going to give it all away, which there's nothing wrong with that, you can actually leave it to your future generations, but in a very controlled setting.
Yeah, you brought up some really good points. I like some of those concepts for sure, and I'm the same age as you, so we'll see. I'll still maybe need to be even a little bit older before I bend a little bit to that legacy.
Well, I think it changes. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say maybe like I think you might have been saying this is like maybe as my son gets older and I start to kind of see how that plays out, that could play a role in changing things.
Yeah, I think it's not our age; it's the age of our children that kind of change our perspective on that. So, I guess if your business disappeared tomorrow, what would you want? Or let me ask it a different way: if your business disappeared tomorrow, what would you most want people to remember you by?
The ripple effect that my show resulted in, meaning, the 5,876 interviews that I've done as of today, the fact that, those interviews on some level, touched millions of people cumulatively over time. They, have over 175 million listens to date. And that, those shows caused a ripple effect where somebody did something they otherwise would not have done because of some ideas or thoughts or feedback or advice or strategies that they heard on my show from one of my guests. And then they went on to create something amazing. And of course, when you can see that ripple effect happening, one time, 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, maybe tens of thousands of times, that can really be a massive impact in the world.
Of all the interviews that you've had, do you think entrepreneurs, founders, business owners are spending enough time planning for what happens if they're no longer around?
No, they're just trying to survive to the next day, most of them.
At what point do you think their business needs to get to, or their success needs to get to, where they need to make that mental switch?
A lot sooner than they probably think, because, a lot of people are literally working themselves into the grave and they could drop dead at any point from any number of things that are going on. So I think the sooner the better.
So my question then is, what happens to Entrepreneurs on Fire if JLD disappeared for 6 months?
The podcast probably just goes into a slow death spiral until it no longer exists.
Have you thought about intentionally building some systems so the business could survive without you?
Yeah, especially with the advent of AI and recently, and what's, you're able to do by, uploading essentially your entire persona and personality and tonality and diction and all the different things that kind of make you uniquely you, with the way you talk, the way you, your mannerisms. And, then all of a sudden, boom, you can have like this living version of you. And there's already examples of people that are doing that right now. And then it's going to be really interesting because you're going to be able to like go to a website when they die, well after they've passed away, and they'll be there and they'll just be like, "Oh, what's up, John? How you doing? What do you want to talk about today?" And you'll be able to have a full blown conversation with them. And it'll be like their entire, as close as their uploaded consciousness as we're capable of doing right now. And it'll be really interesting.
What's the most successful entrepreneur you've interviewed? You don't have to give their name, but like if you were to give a description of the most successful entrepreneur.
Probably Tony Robbins.
And why him? Why do you suggest he is? Obviously, he's got the celebrity.
Yeah, it's mostly because of the things that I just kind of mentioned with myself of, this guy's been seen and heard and inspired and motivated literally millions of people to do something. And we'll never know the impact of what that something has resulted in. But I've met so many people that have been like, oh, I went to a Tony Robbins weekend event and I came back and I launched my business 15 years ago. And, now it's, 200 people work at my, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, that's real impact. And of course, what he does to feed the hungry is incredible with hundreds of millions of meals served every year. So just very impressive and inspiring.
Your first podcast interview was 2012.
Yeah.
How have you changed, or how has your interview process or your podcast structure changed from then to now?
Well, my first 2,000 episodes, so my first 2,000 days, I asked the exact same 5 questions.
And what were those?
What is your biggest struggle in your entrepreneurial life? What was the aha moment that led you to be where you are now? What is the thing you're most excited about right now? What's like a tip or a strategy you want to share with our audience? What's your favorite book? And then we did a lightning round of things. And so I had a very structured set of questions that every guest would answer. And so my listeners would be like, oh, that's Tim Ferriss is on John's show. He's going to answer those 5 questions. And I'm interested in that because I want to hear his answers to those questions. And then at episode 2000, I'm like, it's been a good, what is that, like 6 or 7 years at that point. It's time to mix it up. Now I went from being, a really bad interviewer and a really poor, and nervous and just not structured or well-spoken individual to a really talented, really good, really just it just came easy to me because of the thousands of reps that I'd put in, both as an interviewer and being interviewed on thousands of other shows as well. And I said, we can just flip on a camera and let's just go. And so now I just kind of interview people, the last 3,000 plus episodes have just been kind of me interviewing people about their area of expertise, their knowledge, their zone of fire, and just kind of pulling out the best from them for my listeners instead of it being really structured and kind of, limiting as far as where the show could go.
Is there a common theme? It's probably not a fair question to ask, but is there a common thread amongst the entrepreneurs that you interview of things that they're worried about, things that keeps them up at night, things that they fear?
I would always say it always comes down to revenue is the biggest thing that they fear is a lot of them have a big team and they have a big, budget as far as they're spending on ads and this and that. And they know that if they kind of take their eye off the ball and, they spend a couple weeks, at most a couple months, not generating significant revenue, that they're going to be in a financial crunch. So they're, a lot of the entrepreneurs that I talk to, they're always okay, how do we ramp this up? How do we serve more people? How do we improve the offer? How do we improve the profit? How do we do all the things that, all the businesses are doing all the time?
Do you have a favorite question you like to ask your guests?
What is the thing that you believe about becoming successful that most people disagree with?
So what is the thing that you believe about becoming successful most people disagree with?
That you have to love failure.
And we're back to failure.
Back to failure.
Don't be afraid of failure.
Full circle.
And so you do coaching as well, right?
I do. Very limited, but yeah.
And what's that look like?
Essentially, I have 3 individuals that I mentor on a 3-month basis at a time. And we meet for 1 hour every week. And then they have, reasonable email access to me throughout that time. And then we essentially take them from where they were with their business, wherever that was, and we turn them into an absolute entrepreneurial powerhouse.
And is a podcast method a part of that for them?
If they want that to be a part of it, but for some of them, they want to be more behind the scenes, which I totally understand as well. And so then it's not.
Do you think that this method or this medium of interviewing people, the podcast method, do you think it's a viable one for entrepreneurs to try to integrate into their businesses?
I think it's a really interesting one to this day. I think it's a great way to meet people. I mean, as cool of a person you are, would we ever have had a one-on-one
We would have never crossed
conversation
paths.
like this?
Yeah.
Probably not. So, I mean, it's a great networking opportunity, a great way to have a conversation. Like now, if you and I ever do cross paths, you wouldn't be some random person with a cool beard. We'd high five and sit down and have a conversation because we kind of know each other at this point. So I think it's great to connect for, networking. I think it's great. Frankly, most people are really bad speakers. Most people are really bad communicators. Most people are really bad at facilitating conversations. Most people are really bad listeners. And podcasting, if you're doing it well, you're a good listener. And that's a skill set too. And so it's a talent to be acquired. I was not talented in any of those things. Now I have elite talent in all of those things.
And do you find that, sorry, go ahead.
I was saying just because I've done it 5,876 times.
And do you find that skill set has helped you in everyday life, in your conversations that you might have with your wife or your other business partners and friends?
Absolutely. I mean, most people can't put a coherent sentence together. They and they hem and they haw and they, can't say anything concisely and they aren't listening, when people are talking. And so they annoy people. And, if I'm ever talking to somebody and they look at their phone, I walk away from them. That's a rule of mine. I just walk away.
Yeah. I've been trying to teach my daughters to not have their phone on the table when we're at dinner or when we go out to eat. And I purposely put it in my pocket. And they're like, well, why do you do that? I'm like, because it's a sign of disrespect. If my phone's on the table, whether it's phone up or phone down, I'm giving a nonverbal communication that thing is more important than the person I'm sitting eyeball to eyeball with.
100%.
Yeah. It's challenging raising children these days, right? It's because the phone is such a big thing.
Even a 2.5-year-old, he's obsessed with the phone. He knows the phone's an important product, and he sees my wife and I using it all the time because we're human beings, and it's already ingrained in him that that block is the most valuable thing in the world, besides a human, and it's already happening. So
you and I are the same age, and we grew up in a generation where we didn't have cell phones. Cell phones came around when we were I was a sophomore in
college.
Yeah,
that's when I had my first phone.
Yeah, and so
by the way, it did not improve my college experience at all. I remember freshman and sophomore year not having phones. We would all go to dinner because that was where we had to kind of meet up at the cafeteria. And that's when we would discuss who's throwing the party tonight? Where are we going? Where are we going to go? That's how you found out where you were going. And then you went. And when you saw somebody there, you're like, hey, you made it. You were excited because you didn't know if they really knew, if they were really going to go there. And then when the phone came in, it's that all stopped. It was just texting, where's everybody going tonight? Here. Okay. See you there. And you saw me oh, hey, I knew you were going to be here. And if you weren't here, I knew I could just message you and be where are you? And it's just I kind of miss that.
Yeah. I don't envy the position that you're in raising children, even as far advanced as the phone, the YouTube, the social media. My girls don't even watch TV. When they turn on the TV, they're turning on YouTube and watching YouTube. I don't think they've watched a live TV show ever, right? And I'm like, girls, sit down and watch the game with me, or watch the golf tournament or the soccer game. And no, it's not interesting.
I'm listening to Tom Selleck's biography right now. It just came out. He was Magnum PI.
Magnum PI. Yeah.
And it's just interesting because he's talking about, the 80s, which is, we were quite young in the 80s, but he's talking about those years. And those were kind of the glory years where it was there was cable wasn't a huge thing at that time. There was just kind of a few stations and you had your time slot and 20 million people would be watching that show Thursday, 8 p.m. That's it. And then what took down Magnum PI? The Cosby Show. The Cosby Show came in the same time slot and just destroyed them. And it's really interesting hearing about what it was before and what it is. I mean, it's a different world.
He was Magnum PI, but I still think of him as Commissioner Frank Reagan from the Blue Bloods. I devoured the Blue Bloods episodes.
Never saw
Devoured
it.
it. No, man,
Yeah.
you probably have limited free time, but you got to stream it, man. But you have to
Good.
stream it from season 1 all the way
Okay.
through to when it finished. It's
Good
an
recommendation.
amazing, yeah. Blue
Always
Bloods,
looking for
Frank
a good
Reagan.
show.
Yeah.
You know, my wife and I, we always like to watch one show of one, you know, of some series at night. It's kind of like our wind down. Like after Bo goes to bed, like we sit down and we can usually make it through a full show. So I'll put
What are you
Blue
watching
Bloods on the
now?
list. A really interesting show, actually. It's called Pachinko. It's on Apple TV. It was a New York Times bestselling book. It follows the saga of a Korean family from 1915 all the way to present time, like 4 generations, essentially. It's fascinating.
Pachinko.
Pachinko.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Yeah.
I'm currently,
if you like historical dramas that kind of, again, it's a saga of a family over time. Like, I love that stuff.
after interviewing thousands of entrepreneurs and building a business of your own that generates well over 8 figures annually, what financial...
No, over 7 figures annually.
All right,
I wish
7
it was 8
figures, 7 figures annually. What financial question are you still trying to solve?
What's enough?
Have you figured that part out yet?
No. That's why I said I'm still trying to figure it out.
I don't think there is enough. No, I don't think you are. I don't think you are, man. So you're going to set a number. I'll give you an analogy or a metaphor or something tangible, but it's not that, right? But the first time I had a target of what I wanted in my bank account, right? And whatever that number was, call it X. And I hit X, and there was no excitement, there was no joy, there was no, I made it. It finally became to the point where, okay, I hit that number, and as soon as it dropped below that number, it felt very uncomfortable again. And so I set a new number, right? I set a new number. And by the way, the book of financial planning says you need to have anywhere between 6 to 12 months of either income or expenses put in a side fund for emergency rainy day. And I think that's a nonsense number, by the way. So I set a target for this one number. I hit that number, and then I set another target for another number, and then another target for another number. And it's constantly chasing this irrational number of what I want the bank account to be. And if it doesn't have that number in there, I feel like I'm chasing to get to that number. And then when I get to that number, it's like, okay, I want another number. So the way I think you're wired, and the way I think a lot of your guests are wired, especially a lot of my clients are wired, is it's never enough. In fact, my wife, who we just celebrated 22 years of marriage this past week, high school sweethearts, she's like, when is it ever going to be enough for you? And I don't think there is enough. And that doesn't mean I'm trying to acquire all the toys and all the assets and things like that. It's how we keep score, right? As entrepreneurs, it's how we keep score. Whether it's a revenue number or it's a profitability number or a number of your net worth or your liquid investments, I don't know, right? I just challenge. I don't think it's ever enough.
It's a good challenge. I mean, I will say that, it reminds me of a story when I was finishing up my 4 years of active duty service. I was 26 years old. I had $100K in the bank account because I spent 13 months in Iraq. Like, you don't pay taxes when you're there. You can't spend any money while you're there. So you just like have this really unique and great opportunity to have a huge growth in your savings as a young person, especially if you're single, which I was. And I just remember being like, man, like I am so done with the Army, like waking up at 4 a.m., shaving, putting on a uniform, going to work, doing a job that I don't love, and then coming home late, being tired, going to sleep and waking up again. And I just remember saying, like, I'm going to be so happy, like when I'm done and I can just wake up at 10 a.m. and have the full day to myself. I'm going to take a full year off. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to travel. I'm going to do this and that. And I really believed I was going to be so happy. I really believed that. So then I get out and 2 weeks after that discharge, I literally was like depressed because I just felt like I was not relevant in this world. I wasn't like, I didn't mean anything to anybody. Like I wasn't serving a purpose. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. Like I wasn't serving a purpose in this world. And so at 26, like that really snapped me to a realization, because a lot of people would be like, oh, if I had $100,000 at 26 years old and no need for a job and like, no responsibilities financially, like I'd be so happy. And I would have thought so too. And listen, it wasn't every day was horrible, but I just felt over time, I had just lost my sense of purpose. I like lost my way in the world. And I said, man, like I just need to get back into the game. Like I need to get back into the world and be a part of this world, even if that means some days are going to suck and some days are going to be tough, yada, yada. But like, I just need to get back in the game. And to me, that's kind of what it is similar to what you're saying, is like, there's never really enough, because it's like, as soon as we stop having purpose and we stop giving value in this world, something clicks off in our brain, which is not supposed to be off. And like, to me, that's why like I never want to stop doing something that's adding value to this world. Like my dad's 76 years old. He, is a lawyer. He runs his own law firm. So he has a lot of, flexibility within that, but he's probably never going to retire. Like, cause he figured out that he would just be really unhappy if he retired and was no longer with purpose in this world.
Well, and on that retirement conversation, what does retirement mean? I mean, in the manufacturing era, when people were going to plants and they were manufacturing and blue collar. Maybe I can understand retirement for blue collar, it's a real hard labor job every day, and they've done it for 25 or 30 years and their body just can't take it anymore and they need to retire. But from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from a business founder standpoint, what does retirement mean? Like if I sell this business, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm retired. It just means I had a liquidity event. And if you really have that entrepreneurial gene in your body, why would you retire? Like what does retirement look like? How much more golf can you play? How much more of that hobby can you do, right? That you're not already doing as an entrepreneur, I would say working, but it doesn't feel like work as an entrepreneur because I have passion for what I do. I love what I do. You love what you do. It doesn't feel like work. You've monetized it, which is great, but what does retirement really mean?
Yeah. And I did some research. There's some great documentaries out there and books you can read about some of the longest lived people in this world. And they have a lot of things in common. Like one of them is they walk every day, usually up and down elevation. Their diet obviously has something to do with it. But another thing is that like they actually have purpose. Like they have a reason. They're doing something that's contributing to the world, to their family, to something. Like that's another common theme. So I think it's important to figure out.
Yeah, man. One more question. What does it mean when you hear going from success to significance?
Well, it brings me back to my main man, Aaron, who I had on my show way back in the day. And I've had him many times on the show as well. And he was the first person who said, going from success to significance. And he has a mastermind called Iron Sharpens Iron. And it made me think, because I was saying, okay, well, I have become successful. And this was like maybe back in 2015 when I first heard about this from him. I go, but what does it mean to become significant? And like that kind of made me step back and think and made me move forward into saying, well, what are some significant things I can do in this world? On the philanthropic side, on X, Y, family, Z, whatever that might mean. And it's really stuck with me from that point forward of again, not just, chasing a number, but, chasing a meaning as well.
JLD, in the rare chance that one of the listeners hasn't heard about you or doesn't know where to find you, how do they do that?
You can check out my podcast, which is 7 days a week, 365 days per year, Entrepreneurs on Fire. And my website's eofire.com. We have a lot of free resources for entrepreneurs there, and life is good.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you, John, for joining Uncommon Wealth Podcast. Appreciate your insight, and thank you for the coaching tips on the microphone. Appreciate it.